We focus on the real issues. Cost of living is the real issue in Australia. Now, as you will have noticed, there was inflation numbers that came out today, and there has been a reduction in the amount of increases. That's all we're talking about here, by the way. Nothing got cheaper. Just as it was going up, it wasn't going up by as much as it was going up by last month. But of course, the media, desperate to find a positive story to bail out the government that's currently losing in the polls, well, this was the greatest thing since sliced bread, which is still more expensive than it was last year.
The pre-Christmas Reserve Bank interest rate hike is now looking unlikely, with monthly inflation data showing a large decline today.
New inflation data shows the cost of living is actually falling.
Inflation fell in October to 4.9% from 5.6% in September, and it was a sharper drop than expected.
Well, the new inflation data is welcome relief for households.
A Christmas rate hike just became less likely. The annual rate of inflation has dropped from 5.6% to 4.9%.
But as you know, one of the things that we do here each and every night is I try to show you the data, give you the receipts behind the opinion. And guess what? There is plenty inside this data that is nowhere near the picture that has been painted in the past 24 hours. Now, again, I am not going to pretend that 4.9 is not lower than mid-fives. But remember, the Reserve Bank is doing what it is currently doing to get it down to between 2 and 3%. Now, if 2% or 2.5% would be where they want to land, then basically we're still double where the Reserve Bank ultimately wants it to be. Now, hopefully, the amount of interest rate rises that have happened to this point will slow things down, and therefore there'll be no need to increase. But there's every chance that they could do it in early December, or if they wait, they'll have to do it in February because of the amount of money that we're all potentially going to end up spending this Christmas. But have a look at that number, 4.9. Put it in the head right now. Now, let me show you all of the things that have gone up by more than 4.9% in the past 12 months. We're comparing, of course, October to October. The data comes out at the end of the following month. Gas and other household fuels, 13%. That's not 4.9. Tobacco is at 10.4%. That's not 4.9. More importantly, electricity is up by double everything else currently in inflation, which is, of course, double what the Reserve Bank is currently trying to achieve with all of these interest rate hikes. Automotive fuel, again, they won't cut the tax. It's 8.6% compared to that 4.9. Insurance, bread, dairy, health, and other food products, all way above the number that they celebrated today of 4.9%. Now, again, I'm not pretending that the headline is not something worth paying attention to. But if the government wants to pretend that they were involved in all of this, we'll pull the other one that plays Jingle Bells, even though tomorrow's December. But you get my point. The government has sat back and done nothing as the numbers have gone up, come down, gone back up, and now start to come down. But they're not going down to where we were. They're just coming off where they were. So there's still plenty of increases here, including plenty of increases in things that you can't avoid, like electricity. The government tries to turn around and say, well, we've saved you from 0.5% of all potential inflation. Well, the reality is at 5%, it is double where the Reserve Bank needs it to be. On things like electricity and things that you can't do without in terms of basic foods, again, way higher than the overall average. So if there is light at the end of the tunnel, it is still too long away. And then, of course, when it comes to housing, I had a bunch of people come up to me today who were shocked at what we showed you last night. That when you put together the Albo-dozen of interest rate rises, on top of the one that happened just before the last federal election, the reality is that somebody on a $500,000 loan is now paying $13,500 more than they were this time last year. $750,000, $21,000, $29,000 on $1 million. So on top of that right now, while the media celebrates because the number looks a little bit lower than the previous one, and that's good news for the government, and we want good news for the government because the polling currently isn't good news, and they haven't had good news since the Voice was 60-40 at the start of the year. Well, electricity is still up by double the headline number, let alone things like automotive fuel, bread, food, health, and the rest of it. And if anyone wants to pretend that the cost of living crisis is over because there's a number that's ever so slightly lower than the one that we were talking about on the show last night, would somebody like to tell the people who represent the people who work in our shops? The Shoppers Union today have again doubled down on where the Woolies CEO was a couple of days ago, which is cost of living is creating such tension in the aisles that people are blowing up verbally, and there is fear of physical intimidation as people lose their brain about how much everything continues to cost. Watch this space. But as I said, the media now, again, know that they need to save this government. They need to save this government from themselves, and they need to turn all circumstances into wins for the government.